Hello, really exciting video for you today. We're going to be going through the 14 2024 releases that I am excited for and in many cases planning to read. So we're going to dive straight in with something that actually I'm currently reading. So I am reading an advanced reader copy of The Dragons of Deepwood Fen by Bradley Boyer, which I've stolen that pronunciation multiple times from Mike's Book Reviews. It is a Dragon Rider fantasy with a really interesting kind of political and religious subplot. Not even a subplot, like the politics and the politics of religion specifically, but also the illicit drug trade is like a really big and important part of the main story. What I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to be reading you the blurb from the back of the books. But I can tell you, having read Dragons of Deepwood Fen, that the blurb on the back of the book references something that happens about 70% of the way into the book, maybe 60% of the way into the book, like quite far in. And I'm not going to spoil that for you. So all I'm going to say is I am about 85-90% into Dragons of Deepwood Fen. I think it's really good. It's definitely something that I will be recommending, unless he absolutely shits the bed with the final chapters. Then this is probably going to be a 4-star book for me. Maybe a 5. He could push it up to a 5-star if the ending is really good. Characters are fantastic. I'm really interested in the world building and the story. I think the magic system that he's designed is really good. So definitely a recommend from me. Bit of a spoiler for my review on that, but c'est la vie. So that is coming out in January as a physical book. But if you'd like to get the ebook, you actually can already buy it. So the ebook is available to buy right now. And if you're interested, if you're the kind of person who waits for physical, you can get that in January. Broken Binding has done a special edition which looks really nice as well. So if you're interested in Dragons of Deepwood Fen, then you've got multiple ways to pick it up, and one of those is available right now. In February, there's a few books coming out that I'm interested in. I've got the old tablet here so I can read my notes. So in February, there are actually 4 books that I'm interested in, which is quite a lot out of 14 total. But let's have a look. So book 1 is Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This one is releasing in February, as I've said. Patrick Leo just reviewed this on his channel, and I watched the review because I just needed to kill some time and wanted to watch some booktube. I don't tend to watch reviews for books that I haven't read, but basically the way that he described it was kind of Knives Out set in the world of Attack on Titan, and I was instantly intrigued. Like, I really like the idea of using fantasy genres to tell non-traditional fantasy stories. Similar to how I really enjoy superhero movies that are other genres. Like, for example, the first Ant-Man movie is a heist movie, just happens to star a superhero, and I love that sort of content and that sort of stuff. So the Tainted Cup, I'm going to read the back of the book here. I want you to know how much of a sacrifice this is. I like to go into books completely blind, without knowing anything about the story, without reading the back of the book. In many cases, I like to kind of feel a vibe from booktubers in their like weekly and monthly wrap-ups, and then just go from there. But I will be reading the full blurbs, so if you're like me, you may also want to skip forward until the next book cover shows up. Okay, The Tainted Cup. In an opulent mansion at the borders of the Empire, an Imperial officer lies dead, killed when a tree spontaneously erupted from his body. Even here, where contagions abound and the blood of the Leviathans works strange magical changes, it's a death at once terrifying and impossible. Called in to solve the crime is Anna de Labra, an investigator whose reputation for brilliance is matched only by her eccentricity. At her side is her new assistant, Dinios Cole, an engraver, magically altered to possess a perfect memory. Soon, the mystery leads to a scheme that threatens the safety of the Empire itself. For Anna, all this makes for a delicious, thorny puzzle. At last, something to truly hold her attention. And Din, he'll just have to hold on for the ride. So, don't know about you, sounds pretty good. Next up, in February, we have The Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. So, this is the third and final book in the Empire of the Wolf trilogy. I will be reading Justice of Kings next, ideally hoping to start it tomorrow. So I don't want to know anything about, obviously, this being the third book in the series, and I would imagine that if you're watching this sort of video, you may also not want to know kind of the back of the book for a book that's the finale in the trilogy. So what I've done here is I have, and for all the books that are sequels, I have just got the blurb from the back of the first book to run through with you guys. So this is the blurb for the back of the Justice of Kings, which I will be starting reading tomorrow. The Empire of the Wolf simmers with unrest. Rebels, heretics, and powerful patricians all challenge the power of the imperial throne. Only the Order of Justices stands in the way of chaos. Sir Conrad von Volt is the most feared justice of all, upholding the law by the way of his sharp mind, arcane powers, and skill as a swordsman. At his side stands Helena Sedanka, his clerk and protege, orphaned by the wars that forged the Empire. When the pair investigate the murder of a provincial aristocrat, they unearth a conspiracy that stretches to the very top of imperial society. As the stakes rise and become ever more personal, Von Volt and Helena must make a choice. Will they abandon the laws they'd sworn to uphold in order to protect the Empire? So that sounds great, and I cannot wait to read it. I'm really looking forward to starting that one. It's going to be a shame to leave the world of Dragons of Deepwood Fen. I've enjoyed it so much that I'm kind of sad that it's the first book and it's a new release, because I'll have to wait until Bradley Boyer writes more books. But the Justice of King sounds fantastic. If it is as good as it sounds, then I will be reading in January The Tyranny of Faith, and in February, when it releases, I will be reading Trials of Empire, so the final book in the series. Next up, also in February, we have Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. So this is the second book in the God Killer trilogy. Hannah Kaner, number one, is a great Instagram follow. I randomly came across her profile and thought it was fun. She talks a lot about her books on there and about the process of writing. And the cover for God Killer is awesome, and Elliot Brooks really liked it. So it's been kind of on my radar, and now I've shifted a few books around on my TBR. I'm hoping to fit God Killer in January so that I can read the sequel in February, but we will have to see, because January is going to be a very packed reading month, so you never know how much time we're going to have. Here is the back of the book blurb for God Killer. Kissen's family was killed by zealots of a fire god. Now she makes a living killing gods and enjoys it. That is until she finds a god she cannot kill. Skadi, a god of white lies, has somehow bound himself to a young noble, and they are both on the run from unknown assassins. Joined by a disillusioned knight on a secret quest, they must travel to the ruined city of Blenraden, where the last of the wild gods reside, to each beg a favour. Pursued by demons and in the midst of a burgeoning civil war, they will all face a reckoning. Something is rotting at the heart of their world, and only they can be the ones to stop it. That sounds great. I am totally up for some kind of gods and monsters style fantasy. So really looking forward to that one. And yes, again, hoping to start God Killer in January. Next up is Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. This is also out in February, so of the 14 books, 4 of them are February books, although in a minute we'll talk about maybe more than those 14 books. But in February, the sequel to Empire of the Vampire is going to be coming out, which is called Empire of the Damned. Empire of the Vampire is on my January TBR, so that I can also read Empire of the Damned in February. Now let me read you the blurb for Empire of the Vampire. I'm mostly interested in this one because I struggle to find urban fantasy that really takes that kind of really lights my fire, makes me catches my interest. I really love the Dresden Files, and so I've been looking for more urban fantasy stuff, but nothing has really caught my eye since. And things that I have tried, I've not loved. So I am hoping that Empire of the Vampire will be that new urban fantasy series to get me interested and back into the genre. So here's the blurb for Empire of the Vampire. And again, if we love Empire of the Vampire on this channel, we will read Empire of the Damned in February. It's been 27 long years since the last sunrise. Ever since, vampires have waged war against humanity, building their eternal empire, even as they tear ours down. Gabriel de Leon, half man, half monster, and last remaining Silver Saint, a sworn brother of the Holy Silver Order, dedicated to defending the realm from the creatures of the night, is all that stands between the world and its end. Imprisoned by the very monsters he has vowed to destroy, Gabriel is forced to tell his story, a story of legendary battles and forbidden love, of faith lost and friendships won, of the War of the Blood and the Forever King, and the quest for humanity's last remaining hope, the Holy Grail. Sounds pretty good. Next up in March, we have one release of 3 books. So Rob J. Hayes ran a really successful Kickstarter. I believe it finished last month. I was kicking myself for forgetting to back it because I was really hoping to. Basically, I was waiting for some expenses to come back from work. They haven't come back yet, and so I didn't end up buying into the Kickstarter. I was hoping to get all 3 of the collector's hardbacks because I really enjoyed Rob J. Hayes' work on Never Die, and I thought to myself that would be something really nice to be able to display on the shelf, and a great way to give back to Rob for that story, and also a great way to get in on his new story. So his new story is called the God Eater Saga, which is 3 trilogies. So we have the main trilogy, which is called The Age of the God Eater. And then we have the Annals of the God Eater. God Eater. So Annals of the God Eater is a prequel series which will be set 1,000 years before the Age of the God Eater. And then we have Archive of the God Eater, which is another prequel series, but this one will be set 3,000 years before. So basically, the kind of inciting event for the story of the Age of the God Eater happens in the 1,000 years ago prequel, and I'm not really sure what happens in the 3,000 year ago prequel because I didn't delve too deep into it. But what I've got here is the blurb for Herald, which is book 1 in the Age of the God Eater, which is the main series. That one is multi-POV, long, in-depth sort of characters, and is the main series. But I'm going to read that blurb now. So, 1,000 years ago, the godless kings sacked heaven, devouring angels for the magic in their flesh and the immortality in their blood. 1,000 years ago, humanity's greatest heroes killed God. Emmerich Hostain is the last of the godless kings, standing eternal vigil over the lands of Helesia. He swore an oath to wipe out angel kind and is close to his final victory. But when he discovers a new herald has been born, a human with a divine spark, he knows he must stop them, no matter the cost. Deep in the wintry village of Riverdun, Rhaenyra lives the dreary life of a washer girl, dreaming of excitement and adventure. When a fallen angel from her mother's past appears with a dire request, Rhaenyra's peaceful life is shattered and she's thrown headfirst into a race across the Empire, chased by an unstoppable wolf princess determined to rip her apart. Only the Herald can ring in the Fifth Age. Only the Herald can bring the god back to life. That sounds pretty good. Never Die was a really, really good concept, which I really enjoyed reading, and it had some really fantastic, not twists, but there was some really, really good stuff in the ending, some fantastic action sequences. So I already know that Rob J. Hayes can write a good book, and I'm genuinely really excited for this series. I don't know how I'm going to read it, because obviously you have the main series and then you have the 2 prequels. Should you read it, 3,000 years, 1,000 years main series, or should I read the whole main series and then read the others? I don't know when the sequel books are going to be out. I would assume another year later, because it's Rob J. Hayes has got to write 3 more books, but he's going to be releasing each entry in each set of books at a time. So we're getting book 1 of all 3 trilogies in March, and then the next Kickstarter will be book 2 of all 3 trilogies. Excited for that one. Next up, I'm excited for all of these. I don't know if you can tell, this video is probably going to be like video releases I'm excited about. The next one is in April, so we're getting to the point where the confirmed release dates are kind of thin on the ground, which is why you will see that a lot of these books are like, oh, maybe it'll be April, maybe not. April. I have 2 books. One of those I possibly might get to next year. Unlikely I'll get to it anywhere near its release, which is Disquiet Gods by Christopher Rocchio. Now, the reason that I won't get near this around the time of release is because it's book 6 in a series which also has novellas. It's book 6 in the Sun Eater saga. So Sun Eater is the big sci-fi series I've decided to start next year. So in January I'll be starting Wheel of Time, and I'll also be starting Sun Eater, time willing. And Sun Eater, because it's possibly also going to end next year with book 7 near the end of the year, as Christopher Rocchio wrote them as 1 book, but it was too long, so it had to be split into 2. So the second book is also kind of done and will possibly be out next year as well. But Sun Eater is a series I'm super interested in. People have said it's kind of gives you Dune vibes, but with a more modern storytelling sensibility, which is absolutely something I'm super interested in. So let's read the blurb for book 1, which is The Empire of Silence, which I will hopefully be reading in January. Hadrian Marlowe, privileged first son of a duke, was destined for greatness, and he has become legend, the Sunslayer, the breaker of sieges, the crusher of civilizations. His is a story which defined the course of worlds. This novel is not that story, not the one laid out in the history books, charting the 300 years of his life. Rather, this is Hadrian's story, told in his own words, of being passed over by his father for rule in favour of his younger brother and sent to a military academy against his wishes, of being kidnapped in transit to that planet and sold into slavery on a planet at the edge of our war against the Silsen, and of how he used their eventual attack to claw his way back into the dangers and opportunities of politics. Super interesting story there. I didn't really know anything about Sun Eater, and half of me is like, oh, I wish I hadn't known anything. But really, that's probably only the first 30% of the book. So looking forward to Empire of Silence in January. But in April, a book is coming out called The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. I had not even heard of this author. I'd not heard of this book until it was on the new release radar for Andrew Watson and Patrick Leo in my research for this video. So Patrick has already read The Silver Blood Promise, and he says it's fantastic, and that he's expecting it to probably be his favourite fantasy debut of 2024. So that instantly sold it to me. And then when I read the blurb earlier for this video, I was instantly put it on the list as something that I really want to read, especially when it comes out in April if I have time. So, Lucan Gardova is a card sharp academy dropout, and thanks to a duel that ended badly, the disgraced heir to an ancient noble house. His life consists of cheap wine, rigged card games, and wondering how he might win back the life he threw away. When Lucan discovers that his estranged father has been murdered in strange circumstances, he finds fresh purpose. Deprived of his chance to make amends for his mistakes, he vows to unravel the mystery behind his father's death. His search for answers leads him to Saphrona, fabled city of merchant princes, where anything can be bought if one has the coin. Lucan only seeks the truth, but instead he finds danger and secrets in every shadow. For in Saphrona, everything has a price, and the price of truth is the deadliest of all. Sounds great. The next book is Kavithri, and this is written by Aman J. Bedi. And this one comes out in May, which I often jokingly call the Christmas in the middle of the year because that's when my birthday is in May. And so this will be a book that I won't be able to read on my birthday because it comes out afterwards. But it will, maybe I'll gift myself an afternoon off of work to read it. That could be fun. But Kavithri got pitched by, I think, Petrick again, actually, as being inspired by Evangelion, which I've talked about in previous videos, but Evangelion is one of my favourite stories ever. Definitely my favourite anime and my favourite like Japanese story of all time. So them saying that it has Evangelion vibes made me instantly interested. Now let me read the blurb after I've had some water. Meet Kavithri, outcast, underdog, survivor. Kavi is a Temu. Her people, once feared berserkers and the spearhead of a continent-spanning invasion, are the dregs of Ryan society. Their spirits crushed, their swords broken, their history erased. But Kavi has a dream and a plan. She will do whatever it takes to earn a place at the secretive Mage Academy, face the Jinn within its walls, gain the power to rise above her station, and drag her people out of the darkness. Except power and knowledge come at a cost, and the world no longer needs a Temu who can fight, so they will break her, beat her down to her knees, and make her bleed. But if blood is what they want, Kavi will give them blood. She will give them violence. She will show them a berserker's fury, and she will make them remember her name. Great blurb, very well written, Aman J. Bedi. Looking forward to reading your book in my birthday month next year. In August, we have the first book in a brand new trilogy by James S.A. Corey, aka Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank, the dual writers of The Expanse. This is another science fiction series, and the series is called The Captive's War. Book 1 is going to be called The Mercy of the Gods. I am super interested in reading The Expanse. However, I chose to, instead of reading The Expanse, to read Sun Eater, just because I've already read Dune, so I feel like I have a really good frame of reference for the for Sun Eater, whereas I've not really read any like big epic like space opera style stuff that versus the more kind of space science fantasy stuff that you see in Dune. So yeah, that's why I chose Sun Eater instead of The Expanse. But I am going to hopefully read this first book in Captive's War, and maybe that'll give me a flavour for S.A. Corey's writing. And if I love it, maybe I'll want to move The Expanse up the timeline. But here we are. How humanity came to the planet called Anjin is lost in the fog of history. But that history is about to end. The Carracks, part Empire, part Hive, have waged wars of conquest for centuries, destroying or enslaving species across the galaxy. Now they are facing a great and deathless enemy. The key to their survival may rest with the humans of Argene. Caught up in academic intrigue and affairs of the heart, Dafydd Alcor is just pleased to be an assistant to a brilliant scientist and his celebrated research team. Then the Carrack's ship descend, decimating the human population and taking the best and brightest of Argene society away to serve on the Carrack's homeworld, and Dafydd is swept along with them. They are dropped in the middle of a struggle they barely understand, set in a competition against the other captive species, with extinction as the price of failure. Only Dafydd and a handful of his companions see past the Darwinian contest to the deeper game that they must play to survive, learning to understand and manipulate the Carracks themselves. When a noble but suicidal human rebellion on one hand and strange and murderous enemies on the other, the team pays a terrible price to become the trusted servants of their new rulers. Dafydd Alcor is a simple man swept up in events that are beyond his control and more vast than his imagination. He will become the champion of humanity and its betrayer, the most hated man in history and the guardian of his people. And this is where his story begins. That sounds super interesting. I noticed there's quite a few books on my TBR that are kind of like, this is this impressive, cool historical figure. So maybe that's kind of the theme for next year's reading. Okay, so this one is unconfirmed, and it is the sequel to my new #1 fantasy series, which is The Bound and the Broken. Book 4 of Empires and Dust by Ryan Carhill is currently planned to be out in November. November would probably be a good time for it because it means that it won't clash with Stormlight 5, which will also be a 1,000+ page doorstopper. I don't feel like I need to sell people on Bound and the Broken, but if you are interested, I've recorded a video about that series, but also I'm going to read here the blurb for book 1. Born in fire, tempered in blood, Etheria is a land divided by war and mistrust. The High Lords of the South squabble and fight, kept only in check by the Dragon Guard, traitors of a time long past who served the Empire of the North. In the remote villages of southern Etheria, still reeling from the tragic loss of his brother, Caelan Briar prepares for the proving, a test of courage and skill that not all survive. But when 3 strangers arrive in the village of Milltown with a secret they are willing to die for, Caelan's world is ripped from under him and he is thrust headfirst into a war that has been raging for centuries. There is no prophecy. His coming was not foretold. He bleeds like any man, and bleed he will. I really enjoyed of Blood and Fire, which is the first book in the series, even though it is closer to a lot of these classic fantasy stories that people compare it to. Luckily for me, I hadn't really read those, so I still really enjoyed it. And from book 2 onwards, it becomes really much more of its own beast. And by the time now I've read book 3, and I do think it is currently probably my favourite fantasy series of all time. Okie dokie. In December, we have the release date for Knights of Wind and Truth, probably going to be called Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, which is the 5th book in the Stormlight archive and is the mid-season finale for that series. I'm not going to go too deep into this because this video is very long, and I'm not going to read the blurb for the first book because the Stormlight archive is possibly number 2, number 3 most famous, most well-read fantasy series of all time. So it kind of feels like teaching an ant to suck eggs. But I'm very excited for the book. Even though Rhythm of War took a turn I didn't love. I still think Sanderson is doing great work. Tress of the Emerald Sea was close to my favourite book of the year, and will be high up on that list when I make my top 10. And I think also that this is like the mid-season finale almost for Stormlight Archive, because he's going to be doing a time skip, but also taking a like real life time skip and waiting 5 years between books. Now he hasn't. I don't think he's been super clear as to whether he's waiting 5 years to start writing, or whether he's waiting 5 years to have the next book out, because that will only really be like a 3-year break. And he already takes like 1 or 2 years between Stormlight books, so it doesn't feel like much longer of a break. So we could be looking at like 7 years after next 2024 before we get Stormlight 6. I don't really want to go too deep again into the plot or anything like that, because we're in book 5, so if you haven't read the first 4 books, probably I would recommend going and reading them. I don't want to spoil things like who the flashback character is, because I was told that and I would rather not have known that, so I won't say it in this video. Okay, I have now 2 unconfirmed books. So first off, Philip Chase has said that he is going to be releasing a standalone in the Dan universe next summer, I believe. I said in a video previously that he had said April, and I think I was wrong, and he actually said August. And he actually clarified in the comments for that video when he expected it to come out. So let's just say 2024, there will be a new Philip Chase book. I have yet to read the sequels to Way of Adan. Everyone says that they're better than The Way of Adan, and I loved The Way of Adan. So I do have one on my TBR for this month. I actually had one on my TBR for November, which got pushed into this month because Curse of Mithrace took me so long to read. But also, Curse of Mithrace took me a very long time to read, so I may end up having to push both Adan trilogy books into next month so that I can get started on the series that I want to continue that have new releases next year, that I'm hoping to read those releases on release day. So I guess we'll see. But the Adan trilogy is really interesting. It's this blend of classic fantasy tropes with modern fantasy storytelling and modern prose, but also modern prose with kind of that traditional old school flavour. It's really very much what like the ideal form for me personally of like this traditional fantasy. And I loved Way of Adan. Like I said, you can watch my review on the channel. It's one of my very first reviews, so it might not be very good, but I liked the book anyway. And when I will be reading the next books, I'm going to review them both, and then I will do a full series review, just like I did for the Skyward books. And I really hope you join me for all of those videos. But also, I hope you read the Way of Adan, because it's all on Kindle Unlimited. So for one very small fee, you can read all these books. Speaking of reading all these books, here is the blurb from the back of the book for Way of Adan. The kingdom of the Eternal will awaken when the Way of Adan holds sway over all of Jormungand. So say the prophecies. With unrivaled power in the gift, the supreme priest Bledler leads Torland in its mighty army to convert rival kingdoms by the sword and by the fang. Among the gathering resistance is the sorceress Sequara, whose mission is to protect her island and her Andamaic faith from the Torlanders' aggression. As holy war looms over the kingdoms of Jormungand, a chance encounter bestows a terrible curse upon a young man. Dayraven's curse may decide Jormungand's fate, but first, with the help of unlikely friends, he must survive the shattering of his world. Sounds fantastic. and it is fantastic because I have read it and I loved it. And it is one of the very, very rare books that I bought a physical copy for. And then on top of that, it's one of the very, very rare physical copy books that I have kept my physical copy for my permanent collection and not donated to the library. So that one's joined the permanent collection with the Bound and the Broken series. So that will tell you how much I liked it. Next up, the other unconfirmed, but most people are expecting it to release next year. This is the final book on my list. The final book on my list. I've obviously been talking too much because I'm forgetting how to do words. This book is The Strength of the Few, which is the sequel to The Will of the Many. This is by James Islington, and it's in his series called Hierarchy. It's book 2, I believe book 2 of 3. Now, I haven't read Will of the Many, but I was in Matt's Fantasy Book Review's Best 2023 Releases compilation video, where he asked 73 booktubers what their favourite 2023 release was, and a ton of them said The Will of the Many. So for me, that instantly made me go, right, The Will of the Many is going on the TBR. So I have currently planned my reading out to February of next year, though January and February are in flux. So that's why I've not really talked to you guys. I've not, made a specific quarter TBR. But The Will of the Many is possibly going to be going in there, especially as the rumours, I believe, are that The Strength of the Few will be out in the kind of April-May time. So that would be a priority to get reading. I think that what I will probably do is wait for The Strength of the Few to have a release date, and then the month before read The Will of the Many, because I kind of like to binge series, and this is like a soft binge. Anyway, the blurb for The Will of the Many, and then we'll close this bad boy out. The Catalan Republic, the hierarchy, may rule the world now, but they do not know everything. I tell them my name is Vis Telemus. I tell them I was orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and that good fortune alone has led to my acceptance into their most prestigious school. I tell them that once I graduate, I will gladly join the rest of civilized society in allowing my strength, my drive, and my focus, what they call will, to be leached away and added to the power of those above me, as millions already do, as all must eventually do. I tell them that I belong, and they believe me. But the truth is, I've been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that might tear the Republic apart, and that I will never, ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. To survive, though, I will have to rise through the academy's ranks. I will have to smile and make friends and pretend to be one of them and win, because if I cannot, then those who want to control me, who know my real name, will no longer have any use for me. And if the hierarchy finds out who I truly am, they will kill me. So that sounds pretty good. That's kind of, it's kind of got that magical school trope that a lot of people like and that I like. I'm excited for that one. I'm excited for that, and it has already released. It came out earlier this year, but I'm excited to read that when I get to it. Let me know what you are going to be reading in 2024. Doesn't have to be a new release, although if you have any new releases that you want to recommend me, that would be fantastic. And I'm really excited for self-pub recommendations. So all the self-pub stuff that I have found, I've really found through recommendations from others. So if you have any, please do let me know, and I will get on board with those. I didn't really have time to get in touch with some of the self-pub authors I read earlier this year to ask them if they had anything brewing for 2024, but I am eagerly looking forward to new releases from all of my favourite writers, and a lot of them are actually putting new stuff out next year, so that's really exciting. So as always, make sure you like this video if you liked it. Leave a comment if you think that there's something that I've missed, or you have, as I say, some more recommendations for me. And also, please subscribe to the channel. We've been growing really well at the moment. The community is getting bigger and bigger, and people are having more conversations in the comments, and that's always really, really good to see. So I would love to see the community continue to grow and to have more people to talk to about books. which was the whole goal of starting this channel. So thanks very much for watching. Please do like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, etc., etc. You know how to do it. And I will speak to you soon.